today, but we are on. In today's video, I just wanted to pose a question. Actually, I wanted to ask a question to all of my sisters who believe they have the same God as Abraham, but oppose polygyny, which is one man, multiple women. I want to ask the question: who dictates your standard? That will be my question. In the last Sabbath conversation, the topic was nation building has different rules, and I spoke on how polygyny requires teamwork. And so, again, I wanted to ask the question, like, who dictates your standard? Is it the Babylonians, the Europeans, the Romans, religion, the powers that be, Western society, whatever label you may put on the oppressor, quote unquote, the enemy? Who dictates your standard? I was, reading and just thinking about Hebraic culture, and I was thinking about how polygyny was legal and socially accepted. But I'm like, well, why do some like Hebrew women or some women who say that they have the same God of Abraham, they say they don't, polygyny is wrong or it shouldn't be done? And it's like, who dictates your standard and who made your word the end all be all? Like, why should people listen to you? Who are you? Are you truly a child of the Most High Yah, the same Yah as Abraham? So should we listen? Should we be listening to you if that's not the case? So I asked the question for the fourth time: who dictates your standard? And I'm actually going to be reading from Sister Shaharad's book, The Black Man Guides to Understanding the Black Woman. I'm going to read some of the 16th chapter. Is titled The Other Woman. I know I'm coming into this live a little hard-hitting because I had so many issues and I kind of feel like I'm fumbling into, so forgive me if I'm kind of all over the place, but eventually I always come, I always get my thoughts together and I begin to flow. But I wanted to make a point before I started reading it, what I was looking into, and I was reading something that said European colonialism actually legally enforced monogamy in many countries. And they brought this marriage law of monogamy to Africa, to the Americas, and other countries. So my question is, like, why did they make that the standard? Like, Europeans made this the standard, but it wasn't always the standard. Like, our people, they did both. But for some reason, why did this culture, Europeans, why did they feel the need to enforce their standard on the world? Why were they going around telling people like, this is the standard, this is the standard? We have to, question these things. If we say that we are Hebrew women, if we say that we believe in Torah, we honor Torah, but yet we deny our ancestors. We speak about the culture, aspects of the culture, and say, you're wrong for doing polygyny. That's not right. Just because it's in scripture don't mean that we should do it. That doesn't even make any sense, because it's not, you're giving your opinion, but you're not realizing that this was a culture that was socially acceptable. People accepted it. It was legal. So now we're supposed to disregard history and go based on your opinion based on what? Because who gave you that standard? Are you trying to go around colonizing people? Or are you trying to do the same thing and trying to insert, like, this is the standard, this is the standard? Are you copying the same people that went around the world telling people this is the marriage standard? Do this, do that. Is that what you're doing? I have to pose that question when I think about, sisters like this. Is that what you're doing? It sounds like that is exactly what you are doing. So I'm gonna get into it. The Other Woman, and I can't read the whole chapter, of course, because I know there's copyright laws and things of that nature, so I don't want to get flagged or anything like that. But so I'm just going to read parts that just jumped out at me. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I'm most likely going to do a part 2 because there was like so much. I was like, whoa, okay, let me just read. So, the black man's handling of more than one woman is in a bad state of condition. The tenderest part of a Black woman's life is the part that involves her relationship with her man. Even though she is not doing what he wants her to do, the fact that she is with him and claims to love him makes her territorial. She may go literally berserk if her man wanders for a one-night stand, or develops a full-blown relationship with another woman. Can't do that. The Black woman does not understand her role in life with the Black man. I was like, when she said that, I'm like, you said it, like right there. The Black woman does not understand her role in life with Black men. That's the problem. That's a part of the problem. She can be the woman or the other woman to a Black man. Both positions have their own idiosyncrasies of pro and con. It depends upon the woman's perspective as to which position she will occupy. That is deep wisdom right there, because it does depend on your perspective. You can have the perspective of, I'm functioning as a wife, and yeah, in your mind you can create like, yeah, I'm the only one, I'm number one. And some women do that, but then you have someone like, you know what, I'm gonna just be the other woman. You know, when he having issues over there with her and stress, he come and talk to me about it. I'll be that. So it really is the perspective that you want to have. You know, you can go back and forth. You can choose like, I'm gonna play the wife, or I'm gonna play the other woman. And all of these terms is I'm using these terms because that's what's used inside of this culture. People understand it, but really both of the terms is kind of ridiculous. There is no such thing as like, she's the wife and this one's the other woman. Really, they all consorts, they're all wives, you know, but I'm using the term to just kind of like, because she used it, and I just want to, you know, expound and just share, you know, my perspective, and just saying that she's absolutely right. It is your perspective on what you choose to occupy in your own minds. All right, so she does not know that whichever position she takes does not eliminate the other position from the Black man's life, right? Right. Just because you say the wife don't mean you're going to eliminate the other woman. Just because you're the other woman don't mean that you're going to eliminate the wife. All right. She cannot bear even the thought of this. Now, this is what I had to highlight, this part right here. While she does not obey the rules governing her duties as a wife, she expects her man to obey all of the rules of the marriage vows or of the monogamous commitment. I was like, that's facts. That is so real. She's not minding her own business, which is playing her role. She's steady minding his business. She expects him like, you gotta, you know, honor your vows. You gotta be committed to me. But you're not abiding by your role, which is to respect your husband. You're not doing that. You're not being submissive. You're not coming underneath his plan. You're trying to control him and dictate what he can and cannot do. So you're over here telling him, you got to be committed. You got to do monogamy. You better not be with no other woman, all this type of stuff. But he can't turn around and say like, you better be submissive. You better have respect. You better close your mouth and stop talking to me like that. It's very disrespectful. Know your place. He can't say that though. But you can say, I better not catch you. You better not be talking to another woman. You better not be looking at no other woman. But you can do that. But if the man was to do it, he's abusive, he's oppressive. But when you do it, you have the right for what? Right? And I just get passionate about that, because it's like, who dictates your standard? Because it sure wasn't my ancestors. It sure wasn't the people who had the God of Abraham. It wasn't those people. It sure was not. It definitely was not. So, all right. There is no history of the Black man settling down with one woman and never desiring to have another one, before slavery, during slavery, or after slavery. I was like, whoa. Read that again. There is no history of the Black man settling down with one woman and never desiring to have another, before slavery, during slavery, or after slavery. The Black man has never been recorded to have just one woman. That wasn't our standard. Obviously, it wasn't our standard, and it still isn't. Or else you wouldn't have so many problems, and you would been cheating and wanting to be with multiple women. You wouldn't have so many situations where men are able to have, you know, multiple children by different women, and still he's able to like create a situation where it's civil. and there's no issues. Like, you wouldn't have like situations like that if it was in a man's nature to solely do monogamy. Some men, they are naturally polygynous. So, and I mean, that's just common sense. Yeah, I don't think anybody, well, I mean, they shouldn't really be arguing the fact that, this is something that's innate in many men. I don't think should still be the argument. I think the argument that women have is that even though there's nothing wrong with it, they just don't think that men should engage in it. They just don't think that should be something that they do, or they'll give excuses like, well, if he's going to do it, he has to make sure he can financially provide for them. He has to make sure he does it. They start putting stipulations like, okay, well, if he's going to engage in that, he has to have this. It's a form of control, and her minding his business instead of minding her own. All right, so I'm going to skip. Let's see. The Black woman does not know that just because her man does not have another woman does not mean that he does not want one. He just has not figured out how to do it and keep the peace, right? Right. Because I'm sure if a woman was to approach her husband sincerely and say, like, I wanna live this culture, I want to have a sister wife, and I want you to have that. I want your family to expand. If she came to him sincerely, I'm sure he would start to play with the idea like, okay, he'll be happy to do it. I'm pretty sure if he's a true man of Yah, like, he's gonna be like, all right, let's give this a try. Let's learn more about this. Let me learn more about this. So I'm sure he's not gonna be like, no, I'm totally opposed to it. Not if the wife is like on board and she's like, no, I actually want you to do this because it's actually according to Torah. This is what our ancestors did, and this is how they lived, and it was socially acceptable, and it was legal, and there's a lot more that come with it. And I'll even put a link to a video where, my head goes into it deeper, because I'm not here to like necessarily educate, but it's fascinating to me because I know it's deeper, like expanding a family, and our people who function in polygyny, they were considered to have wealth. Like, you have to have a wealthy mindset, like, to be able to navigate that, like, more love, more wealth, more just having the ability, like, most likely your character is subpar, like the man and the woman, like, yeah. So, all right, and this part, hopefully this don't offend you, but Sister Shahrazad, she's a straight shooter, so I'm gonna skip right to when she says this part. All right, so she's speaking about how a woman, once she finds out that he likes, multiple women, she will keep him up all night if she needs to until she gets him straight, right? She's in that controlling, spirit, and she's bringing that controlling energy. And then Sister Shahrazad says, since the Black woman has reduced her own value, no, she says, since the Black woman has reduced her own worth to her genitals, she also equates the Black man's value with his. She has an idea that sexual intercourse has some kind of divine worth to the Black man as it has to her, and that he should only reserve it for one woman, herself. I was like, whoa, bars. She went in on that. I was like, wow. And it just makes me think about Torah and scripture that speaks about the Proverbs 31 woman, and just women who are vain versus women who receive their glory through the works of their hand, and through her husband being able to trust her, and her being able to build her house and not break it down or spoil it. And those sort of women, they don't put all their value in their sex. But these type of women who want to control the man, and who is trying to like get him to stop, to go against his own nature of wanting to build, and naturally wanting to have multiple women in his life, she's put so much value on what's in his center, and try not to be so vulgar, it's to have it. So she's paying too much attention about what's in between his private area and what's between hers, and she's thinking like, oh, he's out there doing this with this person. She's thinking about the lower nature. That's all she's thinking about, but she's not thinking about the higher aspects. And of course, like, why would you think about the higher aspects? Because we didn't learn like the full aspect of what a family structure is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like, the purpose of family, the reason why man and woman conjoin, what they're supposed to be doing, like, or else you kind of like, you wonder like, okay, why shouldn't I just stay single? Like, you don't really know like what the purpose is. So there's a reason why man and woman conjoin. Not only does it say that in Genesis, like, women were created, but I just want to share this aspect um, when Hawa was created from Adam's rib, and Adam seen her and he was like, oh, this woman was created from me. Sometimes it happens like that. Like, this is where scripture becomes alive. Sometimes you do, as a woman, you recognize, because the Most High Yah, the Creator, is telling you like that person is you came from that rib, and the Most High would tell you like you're supposed to be with that person because you're actually was created from him. So that's your husband. So some people will experience Genesis. I believe it happened in Genesis 2 where that happened. You'll experience Genesis 2 in real life, and you're told that, and the man also is experiencing Genesis 2 in real life where he's like, oh my goodness, that woman is my rib. She's she's a part of me. She's like me. Like, that's her. And the Creator is telling like, is urgent and pushing like, go, I'm sending you there. Go get her. That's her. And Most High telling her like, that's him. That's go. So that is a real life experience, for a man and woman. So that right there, when people experience that, it also confirms what is written in the Word when that happens. So, being that does happen, I didn't mean to stutter right there, but being that does happen, it just goes to show that right then and there, the Creator has a purpose for union, right? And it's not based in just procreation, because the emphasis wasn't on procreation when that happened. There was a whole lesson in science behind how she was created, and Adam's responsibility to her, and it started off speaking about the spiritual aspect of creation, the making of Hawa. It didn't jump to like, they're supposed to procreate. It didn't jump. It gave the roles first. Hawa is a helpmeet, right? And the Creator gave Hawa and Adam, laws like, this is what you do. So there was instructions that were given, so so when women, devalue her worth and devalue the man's worth and just say, no, if you, and just focus on the physical parts, sexual parts, then it's kind of like you're not looking at the divine worth of a person, the divine worth of yourself as a woman, like our divine worth and like what we were spiritually created to do. You're not looking at your ability to submit as being highly, divinely honorable. That's honorable. That's honorable. That's divine. That defines your worth. That's what makes you worthy, when you're able to say, I'm obedient to the Lord. I'm obedient. I'm loyal. I'm trustworthy. I serve one God. I serve one master. That's honorable. That's worthy. Okay, not trying to control another human being. That's very lowly. Very lowly. All right, so I'm going to skip. And then Sister Shahrazad, she goes and talks about like all the different emotional reactions that women do. Like when she finds out, her husband is with somebody else. So I'll just kind of like just name some of them, but I don't want to focus on that. But she may withhold her peace. So she just becomes a tyrant. She gets an attitude. She starts nagging. She starts, just pulling on his energy, his attention, because she doesn't know how to control her emotions. So she creates a hostile home, no longer operating in peace. She lets the house go to hell. So she stops cleaning. She stops cooking. She goes on strike, if you will. She stops taking care of herself. She starts looking bad. And, it's like, as I'm sharing these things, just think like, does any of this sound like a woman who is secure in herself? Does this sound like a confident divine woman behaving this way? No, it doesn't, because it doesn't matter what's happening in your life. Having self-control, having poise, having these attributes of composure. Like, it don't matter what's going on in your life. You've been able to have some self-control. Like, that's a testament to who you are as a woman. It doesn't, like, you don't allow like outside situations to totally take you out of character and make you behave like someone that is wicked and evil. So unless that's who you are, then that's who you are. Then behave how you were created by your father, the devil. All right. So then she also shares, like, she will also tell like his family, friends, and his boss and stuff like that. So she'll go on a rampage talking about he doing this, he doing all these awful things, and he's just only trying to live his culture. He can't deny himself of something that is natural and that his ancestors socially accepted and that was legal, because they recognize and realize like this was a part of the nature of men. So he has to deny and suppress a part of his being for this woman. For what? For what? He wasn't birthed out of that woman. It's like God created him. So why does he have to abide by the rules of this woman? Unless he's making her his God. And we're not to idol anyone. We're not supposed to idolize anyone. So don't make that woman your idol. If you want to practice polygyny, you don't need me to tell you. But I'm sure men they already know, because it's like they on it. Like, you have a movement of men who have woken up a long time ago, realized a long time ago, I am not about to be controlled by this woman no more. And kudos to you. Kudos to you. All right. She also would tag. We've seen the stories, heard the stories. Even in like reality TV, they'll have little clips of women fighting, beating up, and attacking the other woman when they find out she's been talking to her man and stuff like that. Just like childish, immature, animalistic behavior. It's animalistic. And if you get offended by that term, then there's other ways to behave. There's other ways to act. So all you have to do is just change your conduct. That's all you have to do. All right. So she does not understand that he is capable of being attracted to or loving more than one woman. Right. She refused to understand that logic, because it goes back to like, who dictates your standard? For some reason, the Europeans said we want monogamy to be the standard. And this was through colonialism. They pushed it. They forced this onto people. So people wasn't socially like okay with it just being that way. They were forced. Why were they forced? Like, why were they forced to accept the concept? And I'm not trying to force anyone to, honor polygyny. I'm just asking a question, like, who dictates your standard, and why, if you say you have the same God as Abraham, why are you saying that is wrong? Why are you saying that, oh, you would never engage in it? Or why are you so unaccepting of something that was socially accepted? And I keep saying that, and I would just keep saying it, because when something is socially accepted, that means that it was normalized. It was normal. And I think that a lot of problems will go away if we normalize it again. And women found a way to deal with themselves and deal with the fact that this is normal for men. This is normal. Like our ancestors, they did both. They didn't just do polygyny. They did monogamy and polygyny. And I think it just depends, like, because you're probably going to start with one. Maybe you start off with two. There's all kind of different situations. So, like, I wouldn't assume that they just did polygyny, because they could start off with one wife and have that for a year or two, and then they'll start to build. It really depends on the situation. It really depends on how each man chooses to build their kingdom. And it's not on any female to dictate how a man should do that. Like, you don't have the authority to overstep and do that. That's none of your business. It is really not. He was given charges, directives, and a charge and instructions from the Most High Yah. That's his business. Now, if you want to submit and get down with it, and you're like, okay, I'm down with what you're doing, that's the power that you have, a woman, and you make the you make a righteous, wise decision. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to read a few more lines and then I'll be done. All right. So, okay, this one was a deep point that she said. She said, what actually happens between two women is twofold. This is when we get into the relationship of the women. The wife at home and the other woman both experience an immediate zing of terror laced with fear when it becomes apparent that all parties involved now know about the existence of each other. The wife at home is scared. She's scared that the man has found someone outside who he wants more than her. And, she feels stranded and shamed without a man. And then the outside woman, she fears that the pressure of the wife put on the man would force him to cut her off. So it's just like, and then both women become apprehensive about the outcome and both immediately start making plans on how they will become the winner. So like this jealousy creates competition and it just creates you to act in a way that is in your lower nature. You're not operating from a higher place when you're like, okay, I gotta win and go against and compete with this person. It's like you're supposed to be minding your business. You're supposed to be evolving, elevating, and growing and following the path of the Most High God. You're not supposed to be focused on competing with somebody else, and competing with someone else causes negative emotions anyway. It causes you to be sad, depressed, angry, and who wants to live that sort of life where they like that means that you live in a life that's not of peace, that's not of joy, that's not of happiness. And so this sort of situation causes women to behave in this sort of way. But then the black man, as the one that's like, all right, as the one he caused it, he's like, okay, I know what the solution is. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna read what she says. The black man may also be glad it's out in the open, right? He created it, and he may have a plan whereby each of them can live in peace by adjusting his time and money to take care of and see after both women. But they don't want to, both people will be happy. Like, the woman is not in fear, the other woman is not in fear that she will be left, and then the wife is not in fear that he's going to leave her for someone else that she may assume that is better. And so with polygyny, it does help, with accepting it and normalizing it. It does help women to see, okay, I don't have to fight because he likes multiple when he likes the both of us. So that removes any sort of competition that needs to happen, or a woman feeling like, okay, well, I'm gonna just be left without a covering because she's thinking monogamously. But if she's thinking, poly-minded, she's like, okay, well, I'm glad he's poly because that means that he's not gonna get rid of me, and otherwise he's not gonna get rid of me, and he's gonna provide and make sure that we're both happy and we're both able to support his, his mission, and so everybody's happy. But it's really the mindset that you have. So he has that solution, all right, so I'm going, adjust my time and money to take care of both of them. But he doesn't present that idea because of their erratic emotional state. So he's trying to manage women who are acting like children. He's trying to manage women who are just upset in their emotions and their feelings, and they're not able to accept that this standard of what's dictating their standard doesn't even come from our ancestors. And I'm speaking to women who say that they may believe in a God, or who, again, say they have the same God as Abraham. And it's if you say that, if you really abide by Torah and you look at the principles and the traits that a woman is supposed to have, kindness and, using her words, in a way that is soft and is not looking to destroy and to break a man's bones. And you look at all these qualities, this stuff is breaking a man's bones. This is not law-abiding Torah women who are righteous in any sense. They're just causing havoc, and because they are in an erratic emotional state, they can't calm themselves. They didn't learn how to manage their emotions, which means they're most likely stunted. Their maturity level is stunted at the level of a child, and they didn't cultivate that. And they have to do the inner child work to grow up, to mature in the emotional development part. We have different aspects of ourselves: physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. And they have to, as women, if you deal with the erratic emotional stage, you have to heal your emotional body, because it's sick and it's damaged, and if you or have these erratic emotions, imagine how much damage that is causing to your body. It is not a secret that when you have certain level of like loneliness, sadness, how that lessens your lifespan. There's a connection, there's a holistic aspect of all of this. And I know that, if you're not in a mature state as a woman, you're not thinking about any of that. You're just reactional, and reacting to things. You're not even thinking about the future. And it's harder for women to think long term, but a woman of wisdom, she is to some degree able to, because of her wisdom, and she knows that if I do certain things, it's going to lead up to this. So she knows that like how she behaves in the moment is very, important, and how it affects the future. So I'm going to end. I'm just going to make a note of where I ended, because I'm going to come back with a part 2 and continue on, with this dialogue. Thank you so much for all those who have joined. I do apologize if you have left a comment. I can't see the comment section while I'm recording, so I'm sorry. But thank you so much for joining.